So let's just get right into it. What is this new thing?
We have started to talk to some of our potential clients about a different sort of concept. So in the rental business, generally people's minds go right to tent rentals, right? So that's kind of the far end of the rental spectrum. So it's the most capital intensive, it's the most labor intensive, demands the most of somebody to jump into that business. And if we think about all of the different types of rental businesses as like a spectrum, as we go down towards the easier stuff, I start to think about what sort of business could somebody start if they weren't looking to do this, relatively large commitment of tent rentals. And so for the past 5 years or so for my own business, I've made a really nice niche out of wedding rentals, specifically wedding ceremony rentals. So I want to talk specifically about wedding arches, chairs, microphone and speaker, things that you would need for an outdoor wedding ceremony.
That is a big thing. And as you mentioned when we were talking about this over email, it's something that I don't want to do. I actually turn them away now because it's usually in a park, at some gardens or something. And it's usually set up that day, wait around for a few hours, and then take down. And it's on a Saturday. And it's really the only day that I don't do anything. And I don't want to take up half my day doing that.
Yeah. So that's kind of the gift and the curse. So most rental businesses really don't want to be doing this sort of thing where, you set up, let's say it's a 3:00 wedding ceremony. So you're there setting up at noon, and then they have their ceremony and your breakdown at 4:30. So there's a lot of killing time, right? So if you have laborers, or if you just value your time, or if you have a full-time rental business and you've worked all week, maybe this isn't the best type of business. So most rental businesses sort of shy away from this stuff, which makes it a perfect opportunity for somebody who is just looking to get started with rentals. So you and I, we have established tent rental businesses. We'd probably rather not be doing this sort of thing. But if you were looking for a side gig or extra income, a part-time job, and wanted to get into the rental space, this is a perfect entry point into rentals. And because of the time commitment, right, because there's a very hard deadline for delivery, setup, removal, you can command a premium. I've found that when I do these types of jobs, it's one of the healthiest hourly rates of pay that you could do for yourself. So, you give up 4 hours, but the average job might be $400 to $600. So it's a really healthy hourly pay.
It is also a lower cost of entry, as you were saying, because really you only need a few things. Like what do you need?
Yeah. So at its core, I found that the best way to get customers is on the wedding arches themselves. People are going to Google, they search for wedding rentals or wedding arches, or for Jewish weddings, they're huppah rentals. What I try to do is get them in on the wedding arch and then try to sell them the extra stuff, right? So we'll talk about that extra stuff for a bit, because there's sort of two sets of opportunities. There's additional rental items, right? So really logical add-ons. So chairs, a microphone and a speaker for the officiant, or if you wanted to play music, decor, right? People do wine barrels and whiskey barrels at the end of the aisle, things like that. There's your rental items. But then there's a really interesting opportunity for rental or for services, photography, right? So if this is a smaller wedding, you're probably not hiring that full day $3,000 wedding photographer. So perhaps you can add photography services, find a local part-time photographer, create a package deal where you're now marking up their services and adding more value to the customers, but also being able to make some money off. So photography, certainly florists, right? So we bring this structure, this wedding arch, but it's a pretty sad looking item unless you add flowers or add decor onto it. So there's a really interesting little, what started as just one core rental item of a wedding arch could easily be, a $600, $700, $800 package if we add on, services and additional items.
So with adding on the services, are you hiring the a photographer that's like kind of cheap, or are you just, maybe doing it yourself with a nice camera, or the floral stuff? Are you hiring someone to do that and then obviously upcharging, or are you trying to do all of it yourself?
I want to do none of it myself. I'm a not stylish. I don't have zero eye for that stuff. So in Boston, I have a great relationship with a florist locally. This company Kinship Floral, where if I'm doing the arch for them, I send I ask right on the website. I have on my contact form, it says, is there anything else we can help you with? Florist recommendation is one. So all these different services. And then if they show interest, I just send them right along to my partner, let them completely work it out on their own. I don't want to make more work for myself. I don't want to start selling floral arrangements, but now I get a kickback from the florist. So ditto for the photographer, right? Let them charge what they want. Let them work it out with the customer. I'll just happily take a kickback.
Okay, and then say they contact the florist first and ask, if you get referred from someone else, do you give them a kickback?
Yeah. Try to be as quid pro quo as possible.
Okay, cool. You mentioned the items, but really to get started is an arch, chairs. That's your basic. That's your basic. Yeah,
at its core, so because of the pandemic, obviously the sizes of the weddings have gotten smaller. So as you're seeing here, the typical job during the pandemic is, 30 to 50 chairs and a wedding arch. It's happening outside. So the core is definitely just the wedding arch and chairs. And one of the things I want to point out that makes this such a attractive, viable, small business is that we're not talking about box trucks. We're not talking about warehousing or, there's not really much storage need. The transportation is pretty lightweight. You could do this in a pickup truck or an SUV. That's the core, right? And you could probably service 80% of the inquiries that you get just doing a wedding arch and some chairs, and people are thrilled.
And then like the add-ons are going to be that microphone and a speaker and a stand, maybe a red runner or white runner. Some wine barrels or some, pillars. The pillars aren't really in that much anymore. Maybe if you want to do it, some chairs, sashes, or bows. And then, like I said, this can all be done. And if you got an SUV, this can be done in a small trailer. You got a pickup truck, most of it can be done in there. You got a van, or just take 2 vehicles or whatever. Most depends kind of on the chairs that you buy and stuff, but it can all be done. You don't have to own a big box truck for it.
Exactly. So the fun stat for you is the pandemic has made this little niche really explode. So this was one of those things that really worked out nicely last year for me. And I kind of enjoyed doing it. So I'm in Boston, so a lot of these are on the coast. So I'll go do one of these events, and set up at noon, take down at 4, and in between with those 4 hours, I'll throw my bike in the back, or I'll bring my wife with me and we'll do dinner or something. So, or lunch in that case, easy time commitment, right? The actual work is maybe an hour of setting up and breaking down. And then the rest is just killing some time. But where I started this was the pandemic has made this, a need, an actual need. But even before the pandemic, 80% of weddings now happen outside of the religious building. So this was a trend, back in 2018 before we had to do outdoor events. These outdoor weddings are certainly here to stay and not just a fad because of the pandemic.
Right. We got a good question from Randy. How do you know how to price? Because generally you just price by the item if you're a rental company, but now you're talking about Saturday, you're talking about not just going there on Friday and picking up on Monday. You're there, even though you're not working, it's still your time. So before you go, what I used to do is, depending on where it was, I would just charge an extra $50 to $200 or whatever. And I would do the same thing as you. Usually these places are somewhere cool with a lake nearby or something. And I would go and then hang out there and do something fun and then pick up. But then I would still charge more for it. But to me, it still wasn't enough. So that's why I keep saying no to them. But anyways, go ahead. How do you think you come up with a price?
So I tend to test. If you think people are balking at your price, you kind of adjust. But I tell people, try to be as transparent as possible. And I say, listen, even if it's just the arch, this venue is an hour away from me, and I'm now sort of handcuffed to you for the day. I can't do 4 of these in a day. So because of that, I have to charge X. And generally people sort of understand that realistically what they're paying for is like a block of your time. My average rental, using some of the slides you showed, if I'm doing a wedding arch and 30 white padded chairs, I'm probably in like the for this setup here. This was maybe $400, something like that. And on that day, I actually had 3 events. So I had made a really nice day. It was like call it a $1,200 day for basically driving around and doing errands along the coast.
Okay, so that takes some coordination, and you can't just say yes to one that's 2 miles or 20 minutes this way, 20 minutes that way, an hour that way. You can kind of like, if one's going to be in one park and one's going to be in another park 10 minutes away, you can like be like, yeah, oh yeah, I'll definitely do that. And then do your time management accordingly.
Right. And depending on what they're renting, like the arch that you just showed, that requires 0 tools, right? It's literally just put together by hand. So if you do have kind of those entry level laborers, and this is one of these things that nobody can screw up. So even if you don't want to do every single one of them on your own, you can send somebody and still make some margin on their time.
Oh man, arches. Obviously you can buy arches. I buy mine from, or you can make your own. Well, just when you make your own, just try to, just use simple bolts and, wing nuts instead of regular nuts. And you can just get diagrams from online to make an arch, or they're not really that hard. So the arch isn't that expensive. The chairs is probably the most expensive part.
Yeah. So a lot of the dirty secret that I tell some people, like if I can't do a job for them, but I really want to help them out, I tell them, listen, I'll buy this piece of equipment on Etsy. A lot of the times the purchase price is less than the rental price. So if I charge $400 for it, somebody could probably buy it for $300. It's just the logistics of now, who goes over there before the wedding and sets this thing up. And there's a shop on Etsy called Annie's Creek, and they do a lot of birch, right? So birch arches, birch huppahs. And because it's birch, it does require, a drill and things like that. So it's not as totally like DIY as maybe the arches you buy. Some of them I buy from Etsy. All of the arches, some from maybe Wayfair, right? Because they double as basically backyard. Like you could use these in your garden, right? Just
right.
That's kind of the other purpose. So, but in general, I'm basically breaking even on the first rental on these items.
Right. Do not buy one from Lowe's. I had to buy one from Lowe's once, and they're the plastic ones, and they're made to be put together and then stay together. I bought it, put it together, put it in the truck all together, and then brought it back, took it apart, and then sold it for a little bit less than I bought it. Obviously, I made money.
This business has become so popular for me that I've created it has its own website, its own name, and all of the photos are, actual photos from weddings from the past year or two. And seeing it in action is so much more valuable than just seeing it set up empty, lonely in a showroom. And that alone, I think is one of the key secrets to this thing.
It's a small investment, or it's smaller. The chairs obviously cost a lot. You don't need that much to transport it. It's just like you got a normal job. You can do this on the weekend. This can be your entry point into it. Storage. You got a garage. Great. Or if you don't have a garage, but you're transporting everything in the trailer, keep it in the trailer. You got a shed. Also, this stuff would not take up that much room in your living room or dining room. Just sacrifice your dining room and make $600 extra a weekend. I know a lot of people that I was talking to that started in the rental business, and they were just working out of apartments and just didn't either have a dining room or living room or something, and we're just making money hustling. So it's like low entry cost all around, and if you got a normal job, it's just like you can do it on the side.
Exactly. Yeah, this is such a side money or side gig type of job. So like you said, it's predominantly weekends, and like we talked about, at say 5 hours of your time, even if you're doing say it's a $300 or $350 rental, there are very few ways to make $70, $80 an hour in a part-time job that hourly pay per hour, butchered that, but that pay per hour is so much healthier than going and getting that bartending job or whatever else people do on the side.
Anyways, thank you everyone, and have a good night, and see you next Tuesday.
Thanks, Ed.